A judge mocks a former attorney general on livestream. Then 7 minutes later, he's the one in handcuffs. This isn't a movie. This happened in real life. And the courtroom has never seen a takedown like this. In what began as a routine courtroom hearing, quickly spiraled into one of the most unexpected and jaw-dropping moments in recent legal history. What was supposed to be just another legal argument over corporate wrongdoing turned into a viral sensation, filled with shock, gasps, and flashing handcuffs. The kind of moment people replay over and over again because they can't believe it actually happened. It all started on a calm Monday morning at the downtown courthouse. The air was tense, but nothing out of the ordinary, until Judge Andrew H. Stones took the bench. Known for his no-nonsense style and razor-sharp tongue, Judge Stones had built a reputation over the years as someone who didn't tolerate nonsense, but sometimes his sarcasm crossed the line. Balance scale. Sitting across the room was none other than Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, now serving as legal counsel in a high-profile corporate fraud case. Bondi, experienced and unshaken, was fully prepared to present her arguments. But from the moment she began speaking, the judge's attitude was off. Eyes. Observers noted that Judge Stones interrupted her multiple times, rolled his eyes, and even chuckled sarcastically. At one point, he leaned forward and delivered a jab that would soon backfire. Ms. Bondi, if I wanted a lecture on law from cable news, I would have tuned into your interviews instead of wasting my morning here. The courtroom chuckled nervously. Some people smirked. Others were stunned. But Pam Bondi didn't flinch. Her face remained calm, her voice steady. She simply smiled and replied with something that flipped the entire situation upside down. Your Honor, you may want to choose your words carefully today. There's something you should know. That sentence changed everything. High voltage. Suddenly, the courtroom wasn't just watching a legal exchange. They were witnessing something far bigger. Behind her cool demeanor, Bondi had been quietly working on something explosive, and it was about to detonate in real time. As the judge sat back, arms crossed, thinking he had won the verbal spar, Bondi pulled out a folder. In it were documents tied not just to the case at hand, but directly implicating Judge Stones in judicial misconduct. And not only that, federal agents were already in the building. Flushed face. The silence in the room was deafening. Witnesses froze. Cameras zoomed in. A few people gasped audibly as the realization hit. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a trap, and the judge had walked right into it. Within minutes, courtroom security stepped aside as federal marshals entered the room. The same judge who mocked Pam Bondi was now the one being spoken down to, handcuffed in front of the public and led away. His face pale, his authority shattered, and his reputation in ruins. Collision. And just like that, the clip went viral. The internet exploded, and a courtroom that began with sarcasm and control ended in handcuffs and chaos. Fire. The day began just like any other court proceeding. The buzz in the hallway was nothing unusual. Legal teams pacing, reporters adjusting their notepads, and quiet murmurs of anticipation. The case in question was already drawing attention due to the scope of the alleged corporate fraud. But no one expected the real headline would come from the judge himself. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with expectation. The plaintiff's legal team, representing a group of whistleblowers, was prepared to lay out damning evidence against a major financial entity accused of defrauding investors. Representing them was none other than Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and a seasoned legal warrior. Bondi entered the courtroom calmly, with folders neatly stacked in hand. Her presence commanded attention. She wasn't just any legal consultant. She had a reputation for being both sharp and relentless, especially in cases involving corruption or abuse of power. Judge Andrew H. Stones took the bench with his usual air of authority. Known for his aggressive demeanor and blunt remarks, he was feared by many attorneys who appeared before him. He wasted no time signaling his mood that morning, tense, impatient, and most notably dismissive. As Bondi began to speak, laying the groundwork for her team's argument, Judge Stones interrupted almost immediately. "I've read this already," he snapped. "Let's not waste the court's time with redundant details." Bondi remained unfazed. She continued presenting her argument, citing case law and referencing the evidence she was about to submit. But the interruptions kept coming. Each time she spoke, Judge Stones would cut in. He scoffed at her reasoning, mocked her tone, and even glanced toward the defense attorneys with a smirk. Then came the comment that set social media ablaze. "Ms. Bondi," the judge said, voice dripping with sarcasm, "maybe you should review Law 101 before wasting this court's time again." A few quiet chuckles could be heard from the defense table. In a matter of seconds, someone watching the court's live stream had clipped the moment and posted it online. Reactions came fast. Some found it humorous, others found it disrespectful. What no one knew at that moment was that Judge Stones had just walked into a trap. Pam Bondi paused. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger. Instead, she looked directly at the judge and calmly said, "Your Honor, you may want to choose your words carefully today. There's something you should know." The courtroom fell silent. It was the tone of her voice, not the volume, that changed the atmosphere. The confidence, the precision. It was clear to everyone in that room that Bondi wasn't rattled by the judge's sarcasm. In fact, she was prepared for it. What happened next would turn this ordinary hearing into a national spectacle, a moment of reversal, revelation, and real-time consequences. And the first domino had just fallen. As the final echoes of her words faded, an unnatural stillness fell over the courtroom. Every lawyer, clerk, and spectator held their breath. Pam Bondi, without raising her voice or even shifting her tone, had just detonated a bomb in the middle of the court, and the silence that followed was louder than any gavel strike. Calmly and methodically, Bondi stepped forward and placed a thick folder of documents onto the presentation table. These weren't just pieces of evidence for the case she was hired to support. They were part of a sealed complaint she had submitted days earlier to the Federal Judicial Oversight Committee. And the complaint wasn't against the corporate defendants. It was aimed directly at Judge Andrew H. Stones. As murmurs began to ripple through the room, Bondi addressed the judge again, now with the weight of authority in her voice. "These documents contain records of communications, financial transactions, and testimony from multiple witnesses," she said. "They indicate a pattern of unethical behavior, obstruction of due process, and potential criminal conspiracy on the part of this court's presiding judge." The courtroom froze. Even the stenographer hesitated, unsure whether to keep typing or look up in disbelief. The allegations were staggering. Undisclosed financial interests in companies tied to the case, private meetings with defense counsel at off-the-record locations, and tampering with procedural elements to delay or bury evidence. According to Bondi, this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a broader pattern of judicial abuse. As the judge sat motionless, his expression shifting from smugness to confusion to something closer to panic, Bondi didn't flinch. She had done her homework. She knew the timing, the audience, and the power of the moment. Then came the revelation that made jaws drop. "While Your Honor was mocking me from the bench," she said, pausing for effect, "federal investigators were already inside this courthouse. My team has been working alongside them for over 2 weeks. They're not coming, they're here." Gasps filled the room. Some spectators turned their heads toward the rear doors, half expecting to see someone burst in. And yet, Bondi's demeanor remained poised, as if she were simply reading a statement at a press conference. She concluded with a line that would go viral within minutes, replayed on countless news outlets and social media feeds. "With all due respect, Your Honor, this court will soon belong to someone else." It was a mic-drop moment, a calculated strike delivered with surgical precision. The message was clear. The power dynamic had shifted, and Judge Stones was no longer in control. For the first time that morning, the judge had nothing to say. No sarcastic retorts. No rolled eyes. Just silence. His gaze dropped to the bench as the weight of Bondi's words began to settle in. But the drama wasn't over. In fact, it was only beginning. Because while the room stood still in disbelief, others were already moving behind the scenes, and they weren't there to watch. They were there to act. What happened next was like a scene pulled straight from a legal thriller. Only this was real, and it was all happening live. Just 7 minutes after Pam Bondi's bombshell declaration, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. The sound was soft, but unmistakable. Every head turned. A trio of federal marshals walked in, dressed in plain suits, but unmistakably official. Their presence didn't feel like a routine check. It was intentional, it was serious, and it was silent. The kind of silence that holds its breath before something historic happens. The marshals didn't hesitate. With quiet authority, they moved toward the front of the courtroom. Gasps and murmurs broke out as people began to realize this wasn't a security check. This was an arrest in progress. One of the lead marshals stepped up to the bench and addressed Judge Stones directly, while two others flanked the platform. Judge Andrew H. Stones, the lead agent said, voice clear and firm. You are under investigation for federal judicial corruption. By order of a sealed federal warrant, we are placing you under arrest. The judge's expression changed instantly. The once smug confidence that had colored his tone all morning disappeared. His face turned pale. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out at first. When he finally did respond, his voice was strained, almost pleading. This is absurd, he said, rising from the bench. I'm a sitting judge. You can't do this in my courtroom. But the marshals didn't blink. Sir, we're acting on direct orders from the Department of Justice. The lead marshal replied. Please comply. The silence that followed was filled with tension. For a moment, it looked as if Judge Stones might resist. A flicker of indignation crossed his face. But then reality set in. He looked out at the sea of shocked faces, at the court reporter frozen with her hands above her keyboard, at Pam Bondi calmly standing by, arms crossed. Phones were out now. Cameras were rolling. Thousands were watching the live stream from across the country. And within moments, the scene would be clipped, shared, and dissected by millions. Judge Stones finally nodded, slowly. One of the marshals stepped forward, took his hands, and clicked the cuffs around his wrists. The sound of metal locking into place echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. In front of the entire courtroom, Judge Andrew H. Stones was led away in handcuffs. Outside, the media was already swarming. Inside, the reaction was total disbelief. A TikTok clip of the arrest hit 2 million views in under an hour, with the caption, "When the judge gets judged." Court officials released a statement later that day confirming that Stones was facing multiple charges, including abuse of judicial authority, obstruction of justice, fraudulent conduct during trials. For a man once seen as untouchable, it was a swift, humiliating fall from power, and it happened right on his own bench. Pam Bondi didn't stay to bask in the courtroom chaos she had just ignited. She didn't speak to the press or wave to the cameras. Instead, she gathered her files, nodded to her team, and walked out of that courtroom in complete silence, leaving behind a moment that would dominate headlines for days to come. Later that afternoon, her legal team issued a short but powerful statement. Justice works best when no one is above it, not even those who wear the robe. It was a clear message, no gloating, no political spin, just a line that resonated with the gravity of what had just unfolded. The legal world responded quickly and decisively. Judge Andrew H. Stones was suspended within hours, pending a full investigation. The National Judicial Oversight Board announced the opening of a formal ethics and criminal review, confirming that the allegations were serious enough to trigger federal scrutiny. For legal scholars and courtroom veterans, this was no ordinary case. Many called it one of the most dramatic and public judicial takedowns in modern U.S. history. Judges have been investigated before, but rarely in such a visible, live-streamed, real-time collapse of authority. Pam Bondi's approach, in particular, drew massive attention. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't push back when insulted. Instead, she let the facts do the heavy lifting, waiting for the exact moment to release them, in front of the one person who thought he was above accountability. Legal commentators were quick to call it a masterclass in legal execution. Calm, calculated, and devastatingly effective. On the other side of a scandal, Judge Stones isn't backing down quietly. According to sources close to his office, he's already hired multiple high-profile defense attorneys. In a preliminary statement, his legal counsel claimed that the accusations were politically motivated and part of a coordinated takedown meant to destroy his career. But critics aren't convinced. Bondi's evidence was extensive. Her coordination with federal investigators, her decision to move during a live court session, and the presence of sealed warrants all suggest something far more substantial than politics. Online, the reaction has been explosive. Millions have now seen the footage of the judge being arrested. TikTok and YouTube are flooded with commentary, breakdowns, and reactions. Hashtags like #JudgeTheJudge and #BondiBombshell are trending. And yet, this may be only the beginning. With more evidence reportedly still under review, and other cases possibly impacted by Judge Stone's rulings, the ripple effect could shake more than just one courtroom. So, fam, what do you think about this courtroom chaos? Was Judge Stone's out of line from the beginning? Or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Did Pam Bondi pull off one of the boldest legal moves of the decade? Or did she go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if this story had you hooked from start to finish, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life courtroom drama, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, the gavel might drop, but karma always claps back. If you found this story wild, shocking, or just plain unforgettable, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more real courtroom drama, and turn on notifications so you never miss a twist. We've got more unbelievable stories coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.